Hey, everybody, welcome back to Sound On. This is episode 25. We have a lot to cover today. We'll be doing an election day recap. We'll be joined by KOMO's very own senior reporter, the one and only Chris Daniels. Got to have some anticipation with that.
That's right.
We're going to be talking about this trending Reddit thread, people listing off all of their wishes for the Seattle area. We're also celebrating our very own silver anniversary, 25 episodes of Sound On. And we have a busy weekend, lots of concerts and important events to get to. Veterans Day is coming up. Here's Sound On. 25. We are kicking it off strong. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'm Tyrah Majors.
I'm Steve McCarron. We love having you join us. And here we are in November.
And I'm not going to lie, Steve, I'm feeling kind of out of whack. Like you can tell, I'm stumbling on my words. My sleep schedule is just really off right now. Daylight savings, we're falling back. We've already fell back. The days are shorter. The nights are longer. How are you feeling?
I don't like it. Yeah, I was stumbling on the news today. I was fumbling over my words. Sleep is a little off. I noticed I've been waking up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. And it just feels I'm just slugging along.
I think a lot of people are feeling like that. And this is what doctors call seasonal affective disorder. I actually just did a report on it a couple days ago. And it basically says when those days are a little shorter and we're in this constant state of gray here in the Pacific Northwest, our moods just naturally change. You know, the energy's off. So if you're feeling those symptoms as well, leave us a comment. Let us know what you do to combat those feelings.
You know what I have loved over the last couple of days?
What?
And you and I were just walking around KOMO Plaza, taking a couple photos near the monorail line, which runs right past our building. And we were noticed with some of our Seattle Refined friends that there's a little Christmas tree that's up over there. We know that one of our reporter friends in the newsroom has also put up a Christmas tree. Remember that little thing that came out, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that said, if you want to feel joy and you like putting up your Christmas stuff early, why not do it? And I think, just because a lot of us are feeling super sluggish, I'm seeing more and more of people putting their stuff up early.
Let's just decorate for Christmas. That'll change everything.
I don't know if I'm ready to do that, though. It's a little too early.
Do everything at your own pace, right?
I suppose, yeah.
Just like we did with voting.
We
Steve,
did, yes.
You were a super early voter. You got your ballot in the mail, and you turn it in pretty quickly?
The day before the election.
Oh, the day before. Oh. I thought you mailed yours in.
No.
I turned mine into one of the ballot drop boxes in South Lake Union.
Yeah.
Literally at 5 p.m.
Oh, so you you had a couple hours.
I think you have until 8 p.m. or something? Yeah. So I was rushing against the clock, but I did it.
Good for you. It's good to have that done, right? And it's been kind of a crazy last 24 hours. We have the ballot counting that's resuming today after those hazmat scares that happened in 4 different counties in our state, King, Pierce, Skagit, and Spokane counties. So we have those, that obviously impacted the voter count in all those counties yesterday. And particularly in King County, it kind of limited the number of ballots that were part of that latest round of results that we got yesterday. And we cannot think of a more perfect person to sort of talk about where things stand right now than none other than one of our favorite guests. And we should note this, Chris, you are our first guest to appear twice.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like we should give you an award or something, maybe this highlighter that is next to my desk or something.
I'm just trying to appear on every KOMO News show this week in every time slot. That's my.
And have you?
Week. I think I'm pretty darn close at this point.
Okay.
I think that's called hitting for the KOMO cycle or something.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. And since we were just talking about, daylight saving time, no S. How are you feeling this week after? I know it's obviously been a busy week for you as a reporter, but how are you feeling with the time change and the sun going away sooner and all that?
I love falling back. I don't have the problem as a native Washingtonian having this chance once a year to fall back and get an extra hour of sleep. It is a little weird though, the big dark, right? You're outside at 4:30 in the afternoon saying it's already dark, and it seems like the day is long because of that, right? Especially in the news business when we're out at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock, and you're like the sun's going down, starts going down around 4 o'clock. It it makes the days sometimes seem longer, but I love the extra hours sleep. It's so
But
much
what is
easier
your
to sleep.
tip
Yeah.
as a native Southern Californian?
What is my tip? Having good windows and the ability to black out your windows so you can sleep in, because remember with that hour change, the sun does come up a little bit early. But with the rain, I mean, November is usually one of the rainiest months. The overcast days don't bother me at all. I just think it's all about getting your body on a good schedule and having good shades and being able to not be bothered by early mornings. But I know the two of you get up before the sun.
Yes.
So it's not great advice for the two of you, but
For those of us that
for
work
me,
those of us that work in an early morning shift, it's kind of nice to have the darkness set in a little bit earlier.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it helps you get to sleep earlier.
It does.
I mean, there's a benefit on both sides.
See,
Yeah,
we just need to be
cup
optimistic.
half full, cup half empty.
That's right. We just showed you this question that we're asking some of our viewers right now. Are you pro daylight saving time or no? What do you think about it? I'm going to say I don't want it, but we know that's been dragging on for a couple of years.
I just go with the flow, like Chris said. Figure out your routine. Figure out what your body needs and wants.
That's right.
I think it's the worst part of it is traveling to states that don't have it.
Yes.
And you're like,
back and forth.
So, are you 2 or 3 hours, or are you 1, or it's the same time? Okay, this is very confusing.
It's so confusing.
Yeah.
We know you've been a busy guy this week, sort of tracking these latest. Obviously, yesterday was a busy day with everything that happened with those 4 county election centers and the state impacted by these hazmat scares, but sort of checking the results as they continue to come in, generally around the 4 to 5 o'clock hour, particularly in King County. And I know that, now that we've had this second batch that's come out, we're getting a little bit more of a clearer picture on these Seattle City Council races, particularly with the 3 incumbents and what's kind of happening with those particular races. Are we getting more to potentially, do you think, calling some of these? I know that probably you or I don't do that, but are we getting close to sort of having a solidification on, particularly in those incumbent races, who those next 3 are going to be?
I think today is that day.
Okay.
When it will be crystallized. King County Elections told me this morning 100,000 ballots are expected to be counted today. That's the biggest chunk that will come this week. So we will see. We've already seen in the ballot return statistics that there was a huge jump in the last 24 hours in terms of ballots that were received at King County Elections. The number there is a little squishy because they weren't able to receive as many yesterday because of the scare at the elections facility, but it does appear that there was a significant late surge of voting with like Tyrah dropping off ballots at the very last minute. The voter turnout is in some districts in the upper 40s. On election night, it was in the 20s.
Yeah.
So it does seem like there was a significant chunk of people that waited until Monday, Tuesday to vote. Those votes will be in large part counted today. So I think after 4 or 5 o'clock tonight, we're going to have a pretty good idea just if these numbers are going to stick or if we do have kind of daily updates on specific races.
Does it appear as if the 3 incumbents are in trouble still?
It does look like one in particular is definitely in trouble, in Andrew Lewis with the gap there on election night of 12 points with Bob Kettle. You see it there on the screen. But if you look at the actual, and this is where I think we will have some crystallization today. If you look at those, the actual numbers, the ballot numbers, the 1,600 or so rough math in the difference there. If you look at D7 by comparison, where Lewis won 4 years ago, I just want to give you an idea of what we're talking about, sheer numbers, and how this could change. 50% turnout. So on Tuesday night, it was in the 20s, what was counted, what you're seeing on the screen, going up into 25%. Back in 2019, the turnout in that district was 50%, and the totals were 18,000 or so votes for Lewis and 16,000 or so for Jim Pugel, who was his opponent. So there will be significant movement in those numbers. How many of those numbers go to Andrew Lewis versus Bob Kettle? That'll be the question. But that's that gap that you see on the initial election night is not. We have seen races in the past where that is not an insurmountable total. So it's going to be a question of of just how many are counted today, what the voter turnout is. Again, it's pushing closer to that number that we saw 4 years ago. So but just based on that gap, based on the sentiment downtown, based on the feedback that I'm getting, Lewis is the one that's likely most in trouble of not getting reelected. Dan Strauss, who's over in D6, that's the total right now. Dan Strauss won the primary pretty handily over Pete Hanning by about 22 points. He was endorsed by Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell. He is one of the 5 who were endorsed by Harrell. The other 4 are winning pretty handily right now, at least in the ballot drop. So it is expected that number will turn, and a lot of those late voters, just based on what happened 4 years ago, based on the endorsements, based on polling, based on the primary, that Strauss is going to see significant movement come later today. And then you look in District 2, and there's a couple of stories here. Tanya Wu, I mean, has you look at that number, 8-point gap, and about 11 to 1,200 votes, rough math, between her and the incumbent Tammy Morales. That's a good sign for Wu on election night. We still don't know where those ballots came from precinct wide. Tammy Morales in the primary won by 10 points. She had a lot of strength in Columbia City and further in South Seattle. Tanya Wu, who's been an activist in the community, in the Chinatown International District community. We don't know if that's where the voting came from. So precinct by precinct, I think it's going to be important where those ballots come from in that district. And that is the district where the voter turnout is the lowest. So we may see a huge number today, and it's just going to be a matter of where the ballots came from and if that race tightens up. But Morales, I know going in, was feeling pretty confident about her chances of reelection as well.
And Chris, you mentioned voter turnout quite often. Were you all surprised of the turnout that we did see this week, district by district? I know it looks different, but was anything surprising to you? Were you expecting what we did see?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit more optimistic based on the numbers that King County has now posted with getting back into the mid 40s. That would be more on par with what has happened in previous elections. But by comparison, back in 2019, there will be a story written just based on the numbers today about how many late so-called progressive voters turned out. Because if you look at what happened, look at the voter turnout 4 years ago. For instance, in District 3, which is where Shama Sawant has been for the last decade, the voter turnout there was 58% 4 years ago. In District 6, where Dan Strauss was elected, the turnout then in 2019 was 59%. That is the district, by the way, that is outpacing all the others in voter turnout right now. So I'm a little bit more optimistic. 2019, there were a lot of dynamics at play. The Amazon donation that was made at the last minute really drove people to vote that were for their progressive candidates, a lot of young voters as well. For whatever reason, now we're likely not getting back to that number. King County said before the election that they were projecting countywide voting at 45%, downsize that to 40%. But again, in the city of Seattle is outpacing the rest of the county in terms of voters who have dropped off their ballot in time to get counted.
I know we had Secretary of State Steve Hobbs on the morning show yesterday, and he was asked that exact question about voter turnout, which looked kind of low from the get-go. And he was saying, yeah, I think we're going to hit close to that 40% mark, which I guess for an election the year before, a major election that, like we're predicting in 2024 with presidential election, isn't a horrific number. It's not great when you're hoping to have a much bigger part of the electorate taking part in the process. But, it's pretty consistent with what we've seen over the years from that 35 to maybe low 50 number. So we'll see if that holds. I wanted to go back to District 2 race again, if we can, Chris. I know that one thing that you talked about sort of leading up to the election is the fact that Tammy Morales, you had this, gave every candidate that was running for the Seattle City Council an opportunity to sort of sit down for one of those longer form interviews. She was one of those ones that did not accept that invitation. I know you reached out to her several times. Why do you think that is? What do you think was behind that strategy?
Well, I will give Councilmember Morales the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times there is a separation of church and state, so to speak, between the campaign side and the council office side. The Seattle City Council has a staff that's very responsive, multiple people. Sometimes campaign organizers are not as responsive. So I don't know if Morales actually saw the invitations versus what her staff saw. I followed up not only by email, but by phone call, and it took 8 attempts to even get an email back with her unsigned staffer. It was an unsigned email saying that she couldn't participate. I do think that some of the coverage in the last couple of months has been particularly tough on her, and that we'll see if that plays into this at all, into this election cycle. You know, Morales has a great ground game. She's had she's been an activist for 20 years in that district, working hard on issues. There's a lot of people who know her, but in the last couple of months, she's taken a fair amount of criticism. I have seen her heckled at a Labor Day rally, and it was uncomfortable for her to answer questions there. Perhaps the strategy here, and she would not be alone in this. We have seen this on a state, local, and national level, is scarcity is a strength by not putting yourself out there and answering some of those questions, especially when there's been some bad news in her district in particular versus other districts in the city.
And less of an opportunity to sort of make a screw up potentially too.
Yeah.
More safe that way. Yeah.
And remember, all who are watching, remember, this is an open discussion. If you have a question for Chris, please leave it in the comments. And also, what are your thoughts on the early election results? Feel free to chime in and we'll bring your comment up.
One thing we also want to ask you about too, which was obviously a major issue on the ballot in Seattle proper, was the housing levy, this $970 million levy to build thousands of affordable housing units over the next 7 years. Was looking at the latest results this morning, which is a 66 to 44% split. Why do you think there is such strong support for this, you know, sort of given the perception of there's just simply, you know, all the money that's been sent to try to improve the housing situation here in the city? Obviously, we have a huge homeless problem too, but why do you think that's seeing the support that it is right now? It's pretty significant.
Yeah, I would say this, that Steve, that it is interesting over time how Seattleites are willing to tax themselves over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the levy is. It doesn't matter if it's a school levy or a Pike Place market levy. Something that's has a huge sticker shock of almost $1 billion. Keep in mind, just a few months ago, King County voters approved the crisis care levy. That was $1.2 billion. So we're talking about 2 measures adding up to more than $2 billion. And there's been no hesitation. And on housing in particular, there wasn't really any sort of organized opposition. There was a coalition that included social service providers, business leaders. This was obviously approved by the mayor and the council through a process where you have to pass the ordinance to send it to voters. So it seemed like there was a coalition, an unstoppable coalition behind this to put it on the ballot, and voters agreed. And I don't think there's any dispute what's going to happen with that, even with the ballot drop today. And so it just shows that until Seattle voters stand up and say, hey, we think this has gone too far. I ask that question, it seems like every year. Are you ever worried that Seattle voters are going to say no? And the answer is always yes. But it just hasn't happened for years.
Yeah.
We see it in other municipalities and other areas in the Puget Sound, more suburban, rural communities where they turn down school levies or they turn down tax measures. It just has not happened in Seattle. And there is this added dynamic, I think, and this is objectively speaking, that there's so many there's so many renters in the city of Seattle. You aren't when you're voting, you're not necessarily thinking about the property taxes and how that could impact your rent a year or two down the road. And so I think that is an added dynamic to why these measures continue to pass over and over and over.
And the city willing to tax itself, but you hear all the time from people about it is just so darn expensive to live in this city, given the taxes that are out there for it just seems about everything. And then, you know, things like this just sort of keep passing. It's pretty crazy.
And outside of Seattle, we've seen some major things happen nationally, Chris. For instance, Ohio voting to protect abortion rights, or even Virginia Democrats taking control of their legislature. Based on what we are seeing around the country, what do you think this means for 2024 overall for Democrats and for Republicans alike?
There is a fascinating long discussion about what has happened just in the course of a week with the polling from the New York Times about President Biden. That was a 2-day news cycle where people started talking about, well, this is trouble for Democrats in 2024. The top of the party, people don't want him to run. He's losing in head-to-head matchups with former President Trump. And then you get to election day and Democrats start walking around saying, hey, really, abortion is going to be on the ballot in 2024. You see it in Ohio. You see it in Kentucky now with a Democratic governor getting reelected. And in Virginia, the strength of Democrats winning back both chambers there. So all the stories that were written on Sunday and Monday and into Tuesday quickly evaporated. I don't think any pundit around the country can tell you what it means in 2024, with the exception of we have now seen over the course of the last 2 election cycles that abortion is a key issue for voters across the country. It is going to drive Democrats to vote. It's going to drive them to drop off their ballots. I think you can write that story, but how that's going to impact the election in 2024, I think, is anybody's guess at this point.
And most certainly Democratic candidates will continue to make it a talking point when they're out, on the campaign trail and debates, that sort of thing, bringing up that issue because they know that a lot of voters are passionate about it, and it will drive, in particular, Democrats to turn in their ballots for the upcoming election next year, most certainly. Obviously, one silver lining, though, for Republicans that we got to note, too, is with the Mississippi gubernatorial race with Tate Reeves. He won re-election. So that was, some people were wondering if that might go a different way or there might be a runoff there, but he actually won down there as well. Chris, thank you so much for joining us again. As this kind of solidifies probably today or over the next couple of days, it's going to be interesting to see what, in particular, the Seattle City Council will look like over the next couple of months. Obviously, it seems like there's going to be some changes, and what exactly that's going to look like remains to be seen before we call these races. But a lot of changes since Tuesday for sure.
I think a lot of people will be refreshing their browsers come 4 o'clock.
Yes, I think so too. For sure.
Yes.
And Chris, before we let you go, for our viewers, can you tell them what is next for your reporting? Should they be looking out for anything in particular from you?
Well, besides the election coverage over the next couple of days, you'll see again tomorrow a Spotlight on America piece, two-parter that we did that involved me traveling to the East Coast about a new study, a new connection between forever chemicals and testicular cancer. That is, I think you've also seen, to their credit, the Seattle Times do a lot of work lately on PFAS and the forever chemicals that have been found, and it's all crystal clear that there are chemicals in firefighting foam that has been used for years and continues to be used to this day in some parts of our region. So that second part of that story involving an interview with me and a representative from Michigan will air tomorrow on KOMO, and then we have some other things planned for next week.
Definitely an important topic. And we want to point out this comment we just got from Oceana23, who's watching right now, saying, Chris is a great guest. Thank you. And again, I mentioned the only person to join us twice on a Sound on episode for episode 25. Congratulations, Chris.
Do I get a t-shirt or a 2-timers club or something like that? They have that on SNL, the 5-timers club.
I told you, this highlighter right here. Comes your way. Put it to good use, my friend.
Thank you,
Will
Chris.
do.
All right. Thanks again. Good to see you, Chris. Appreciate it reporting.
Oceana 23 also says very grateful to have a local show covering this.
Yeah, it's always awesome to get Chris's perspective. Obviously he's been a reporter in this market for a very long time and has covered politics closely. And really sort of digs into some of those numbers that we see to sort of make sense of, what voters have decided, how this is going to change things, offering some perspective, speaking with most of the candidates leading up to the election. So it's always fun to hear from him. And as we were sort of mentioning, these ballot returns that we keep watching, we're expecting another big chunk later on today. And I just wanted to bring this up just to kind of show you where things stand at the moment. in terms of voter turnout, excuse me. So we're going to bring up the Secretary of State's website here. I know there's a lot of information on the screen, but put your attention here to the left-hand side of the page. You see that percentage return number, which is 32%. And this is 2 days after the election. And as I mentioned with the interview with Chris, the Secretary of State's thinking that number is going to go up to about 40. Over the past 12 years, we kind of dug into the numbers leading up to the election. We've seen statewide voter turnout for an election similar to this one. So the year before presidential election year range anywhere from about 35 to 52%. And it's really what's on the ballot that drives a lot of people to fill in those bubbles and turn one of those ballots in. So we'll see how high that number gets. In terms of voting in election, Tyrah, I don't know, are you one of those people that participates in every single election? Do you kind of just hit the main ones? What's kind of your take?
I try to. I think as we've learned, especially in recent years, that it really is your local elections that matter more than the big presidential elections, So this one, for instance, what's going on with our city council? A lot of people, including myself, feel passionate about a lot of issues happening in the city. So I try to make it a mission to vote every single time, do my due diligence, especially as a journalist, someone who, works to inform people, you want to be a part of that. So I try to, but I know sometimes it's difficult to be brushed up on every single candidate, every single proposition. What about you? How often do you vote?
I am one of those that votes in every single election, whether it's, one of the early ones, February, March, April, whatever, August for the primary, November. I always have thought that if you're one of those folks that doesn't take that time to fill out a ballot, kind of do the research, then don't complain. I know that life gets busy. I know that people have a lot of responsibilities, but this is a right that we're given in this country. And it's a really easy way to have your voice heard on not only some really important issues, but choosing candidates that you think will create change, the type of change that you want to see, whether it's, in your city, your county, your state, your country, whatever the case may be. So that's why, I've always been one of those people that fills it out every single time. And it's probably something that my parents taught me at a very young age.
I love that. Well said, Steve. That was a really good speech on voting. And the other day, actually yesterday, I asked Steve, who'd you vote for? He's like, I'm not telling you. I'm like, oh, he just does not
tell
people.
You have this surprised look on your face
keeps
too.
It a secret. Well, I know, with family and friends, it's a debatable thing. It's like, do you tell your family and friends who you vote for? Do you keep it sacred? Do you just keep it to yourself? Like, for instance, my dad is really hush-hush about who he votes for. He won't tell us. He'll speak on his views, but he won't tell us who he voted for, but we can kind of assume.
Yeah.
What about you all? That's the question that I want to know. And Steve, if you don't mind sharing why who you vote for is a sacred thing.
I just always think it's one of those personal things, you know, particularly because of the field that we work in. I think it's really important to keep that close. We obviously have a tremendous responsibility to make sure that both sides are presented in an issue. When there's two candidates butted up against each other, it is our responsibility to make sure that those are reported fairly. Voting is a time where we can kind of have our voice heard and sort of make sure that is what it is. But when we're in a work environment, it's very, very important to make sure that things are covered fairly and there's equal access for all candidates and that sort of thing. But
I'll ask you at brunch then. I said, I'll ask you at brunch then.
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding. But
for the next election, 2024.
We're asking you, do you share with your family and friends who you vote for, or do you keep it private? Michael says, I talk about it all the time. Ha ha. But don't know as much about local details as I should. Okay, all right.
He brings up an important point because I think a lot of people, we were talking about how there's a big election next year with 2024 and the, presidential race gets a lot of attention. But a lot of people don't pay attention to some of those local things that, as you mentioned, during the interview with Chris, like that can really have more of a direct impact on your day-to-day life, maybe, a lot of people think, compared to, voting in a presidential race, that sort of thing. So
absolutely,
that's an argument to be made.
Oceana23 says, this is the first year I actually donated to a candidate and put a sign up at my house. You know, I always drive through neighborhoods and I see signs in front of people's homes, like those yard signs, you know, so-and-so for school district or for city council. And I always wonder, like, how did they get there? You know, how or what drove them to, you know, support a candidate in that way to where they want to put a sign up in front of their house. Thanks for sharing that, Oceana.
It's always kind of interesting to dive into how much people donate to a candidate too.
For sure. Absolutely.
You know, whether it's a couple $100s or several thousand, you know, if it's a business, that sort of thing, to dive into those numbers.
Shows how strongly people feel about who they want in office.
It is part of the electrical electrical election process. Talking about electronics here. My goodness.
We've been talking a lot about the city council in particular, Seattle in general, and the greater Seattle area. This isn't just a Seattle-focused show. We talk about all the areas around the Puget Sound region, but something interesting that's trending on Reddit these days, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it up for you, is this question that someone asked. What is one thing you wish other cities, or one thing other cities have that you wish Seattle had? Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
So this person said, last year I enjoyed Portland's food truck lots. They had 10 to 15 food trucks all parked in an empty lot. They wish Seattle had that. Someone else says, reliable, cheap food options that are open late, like New York's dollar slice pizzas. I agree with that. I would love if Seattle had more of a selection of late night eateries. Not that I'm up late all the time, but it's nice to just have around, you know?
If you're having a late night going out or something and then you get the munchies afterwards. I love that Portland food truck comment, because I used to live in Portland about 10 years ago. I was there for about 2 years. And we lived fairly close to Portland State University. They have a great campus. And just a few blocks from there, they had one of those food truck sort of parks, if you will. And it was always great during the lunchtime, because you'd see like one of, you know, fairly big crowd during lunchtime going to one of these food truck parks, and there's just so many options and it smells so good, and you know, you feel like you're really supporting a local business. And there's I think during my time there was about 3 of those parks in Portland, and there's such a variety too. It's just really awesome in my opinion.
It would be nice if Seattle had a few of those. A lot of people on this thread also wishing for better transit, well-connected light rail. That comment had 1,100 upvotes. Someone else said above grade public transit that goes east and west. I know that's in the works in the future. Light rail system going, you know, to and for Bellevue or the east side and the Seattle area. Someone else said coffee places that are open late.
Who doesn't love a good little coffee beverage late at night?
That
one in particular with transportation, I think you and I were kind of skimming through these yesterday, and there's literally hundreds of comments that people have posted about this. That's one of those main ones I think that has popped up a lot here.
Transit.
And living here a long time, I don't know what your experience is like, having moved here a couple of years ago, but that you hear that time and time again over the years and even decades about how far behind it seems like Seattle is when it comes to implementing like a subway system. You think of like New York and Boston and Chicago and that sort of thing that have, you know, good systems. San Francisco's another one. And we're just so behind. The Sound Transit is great with the light rail. I love what they're doing, but we're just so behind the times compared to some of the other major cities across the country.
You know, it's a process. Hopefully they can get that stuff done soon. What is one thing other cities that you wish Seattle had? Leave us a comment. Steve, is it food trucks for you? Is that your answer that you're going to go for?
I would actually go with the transportation.
The transportation
thing. Yeah, because I think it would make such a difference if we would have started the process of creating this type of system decades ago. And there were opportunities to do that. And Seattle voters didn't move forward with those. So,
well, it's one of those things. Know what's on your ballot. Know what you want.
Exactly.
You know, our light rail is, like you said, Sound Transit do a great job. We love the light rail. It gets us to SeaTac, but it is really an up and down thing. And so when we put that east and west train in, it's going to be a game changer.
I think so
for
too.
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
A lot of people are going to take advantage of it. As we mentioned at the top of the show, today is a very special day for us.
Yeah,
25 episodes.
I can't believe it.
It has been such a journey over these past several months. And you know that when you celebrate a 25th anniversary, usually for weddings, I know we're not married, Tyrah, but Usually the gift that you give is something silver.
Okay.
So I don't know if you noticed when you came into the studio today, but there is a brown paper bag that is sitting on your bookshelf behind you.
I didn't notice.
Okay. Well, why don't you grab that? I'm
Okay.
gonna jump off camera here and grab mine.
This is really cute. I had no idea.
Don't open it yet.
Okay.
Don't open it yet. And then
What's happening?
I'm gonna bring a beverage. Here's nice little glass.
Wow. Fancy. Where'd you get these? Are these in our break room?
Tammy Mutasa gave them to me when she moved.
Brought these from your home?
Yes,
They're
I
so
did.
nice.
All right, and I do want to point out, I did ask Tyrah before the show today what her favorite juice is, and she said orange juice. So I went to our little vending machine here.
This is so
We don't have
cute.
orange juice, but we have sparkling orange beverage,
Oh, sounds like
non-alcoholic.
champagne.
I should note just in case the boss is watching. Okay, so we're gonna pour this for you.
Okay, we're getting so fancy on Sound
We
On,
are.
everybody. Thanks, Steve. This is so cute. I had no idea this was coming. This is like a surprise. What
I
in
just
the
basically
world?
told her there was gonna be a surprise today.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh,
Then I'm
it's
gonna let you
orange,
make a
too.
toast.
Okay. Now before we toast, go ahead and open your bag, and you have to put everything on that's in the bag.
I'm blushing for some reason. Okay, sorry if it's a
stapled a
loud,
lot. I'm sorry.
crunchly noise.
Yeah.
So you said take everything out of the bag and put it on the table?
You have to wear it.
Oh, I have
Yes.
to wear it?
Wear it.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Or blow
This
on
is
it, which
so
sounds bad.
cute. Can I reveal what's in here?
Of course. What did you get? I have the same thing.
We've got beads.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Love that for us.
Mm-hmm.
Some silver
them
ones too. Okay, we're having a party.
We
Michael says
are.
congrats on our silver anniversary. Thanks,
Aw.
Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
This is like New Year's, by the
Uh-huh.
way. Steve and I spent New Year's Eve together last year.
We did. It was a blast.
Okay. Wow. So many necklaces.
Okay, you can just do 2 if you want, but there's some other stuff in there.
Oh my gosh, cute.
Mhm.
Wow,
Put
this
that
is
on.
so fun. I love this for us. I'm gonna keep
I don't
mine
know if I
like
want to put
this
this
because
yeah,
I'm
I'm gonna take that off.
can't
That's a
mess
bit
up my
much.
hair. It's
Gonna mess
already
up the hair,
horrible.
too.
Steve,
Hold
this is
it
so
up.
cute. Thank you.
There's something else too.
Okay. Oh, now this is gonna make a lot of noise.
Mm.
I think I'm gonna make some of these necklaces into bracelets. Happy 25th anniversary, Sound On, 25
Sound On.
episodes. Steve, I would just like to ask you before we toast,
Yes.
what are some of your either favorite topics we've covered on the show or most impactful?
Mm.
Because we've covered a lot.
We've covered a lot, and you and I were sort of talking about, some of the main themes that we've hit a number of times over the past 25 weeks is homelessness and crime. I think
Mhm.
the one that I really enjoyed was early on when there was a lot of excitement surrounding the All-Star game and All-Star Week, because
Yes.
it was such a monumental moment for our city that we hadn't seen in a really, really long time. And personally, around Pride, when we had a conversation about LGBTQ issues, and that
Mhm.
obviously hits home for me being part of that community, and just the whole issue of acceptance.
Absolutely.
And you're trying to spread kindness and love to each other when there's so much horrific things that are
Mhm.
going on in the world. I think those are the 2 that have probably been the most fun and the most impactful for me.
We have
What about you?
covered quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, so many monumental issues, so many big things have happened in the past few months. I did enjoy hearing from the community when we were talking a lot about juvenile crime.
Yeah.
We did an episode. Thefts were high, other types of crime. They were spiking, and we found that it was teenagers doing these crimes, and the community had a lot to say about, what they think should change or why
Yeah.
they think these crimes are happening. And I will say the All-Star episode was one of my favorites as well, because there was so much excitement happening in Seattle at the time. And I hope, World Cup, we've got a lot more exciting sports things coming to the city. So hopefully Sound On is around during that time.
I hope
as
so
well.
too. And thank you to Samantha. She just posted this comment. You guys should do more brown bag surprises in the show. Virtual hug. Virtual hug.
Thank you, Samantha. That's actually really interesting. We should, because I think people are probably watching at home like, what's going to come out of that bag?
Right?
Hopefully more masquerade masks.
Speaking of New Year's Eve, we could use these for New Year's Eve too.
I'm gonna keep these. I'm taking this home. Thank you. I'm
You're
hoping I don't
welcome.
have to give it back.
I mean, no, of course not.
So should we take our sip? This looks refreshing and
We
yummy.
should.
Cheers. And thank you all for watching. And shout out to our executive producer,
Yes.
Hannah Everman, who is awesome.
Yes, we've also
She's
had
amazing.
a special crew down in California that has helped us out.
Yes.
You might have seen some of his comments chiming in.
Shout out to Michael.
There's another one. Yeah, he said teenagers have so much energy and more free time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Shout out to Michael and to Cal. Thank you both. Cheers. Oh, you already took a sip.
Doesn't quite taste like orange juice.
It tastes like sparkling orange juice.
It
tastes like
though.
Liquorless mimosa.
Very delicious.
All right.
Let's say hello to Brian too. He just chimed in saying hello.
Hey,
Hello,
Brian. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Now, every week on Sound On, we have this very special segment called Cruising Ahead. And it's where we cruise into the weekend.
Oh my gosh, I see what you did there.
That's what it's all about.
I know.
We've got a lot of fun things happening this weekend. I want to start off with some concerts. I'm going to share my screen. Ooh, it's been a busy summer and fall at Climate Pledge Arena. Yesterday, Travis Scott was there. Tonight, Lauryn Hill and the Fugees bringing their concert. 25th anniversary of the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, the Grammy Award-winning artist. Dropped that album 25 years ago. I can't believe it. She's going to be there tonight. I believe that is at, I don't know, when the concert starts, 7 p.m.? 8 p.m.?
Yep.
All righty. And then tomorrow, can you see my screen still?
I cannot.
Okay.
No, you have to share it again.
Tomorrow, if there are any Gen Zers or millennials watching, the Jonas Brothers will be performing all 5 albums in one night. This is also at Climate Pledge Arena. This concert kicks off at around the same time, 7 p.m. at Climate Pledge Arena. So those are the concerts. Some more things happening at Seattle Center.
Yes.
It is Diwali. I don't know too much about Diwali. I know is it a holiday?
Celebrate. Yeah, it's like a
celebrating
Hindu festival of lights, I think is what they call it. And obviously some really amazing attire.
The fashion is fabulous.
Yes. Food is fantastic as well.
Oh my goodness. So there is a Diwali light celebration happening at Seattle Center. That's also happening this weekend, Saturday, once again at Seattle Center from 12 to 6 p.m. So free, open to the public. It looks like I'm sorry, the sparkling thing is making me a little burpy, disgusting. I was getting choked up a little bit. But that's a fun event happening. And then Steve, you found a really interesting event that's happening.
Oh my gosh. And I know that we're kind of past Halloween, but this kind of caught my attention when we found this. So the 14th annual Port Gamble Ghost Conference kicks off tomorrow and it runs through Sunday. And this is what it features, which sounds really cool. Paranormal investigations. It's going to have guest speakers, classes, ghost tours in the historic and wonderful town of Port Gamble. And it all begins at the Port Gamble Theater, which is off of View Drive Northeast in Port Gamble. Doesn't that sound cool?
It does sound cool. It's for our friends who just don't want to let go of Halloween yet.
No.
You know.
Some of Western Washington's most haunted locations.
Ooh, very scary. And of course, it is Veterans Day. Veterans Day is coming up on Saturday. Correct?
Yeah, it is.
On Saturday.
And this is an event that I know that our friends Lisa Soul and Theron Zahn love to cover every single year, which is Auburn's 58th annual Veterans Parade and Observance, which kicks off at 11 a.m. on Main Street here. You're going to see marching bands. You're going to see military vehicles, honor guards. And if you're not able to make it out for that parade, which is always one of the great events on Veterans Day around here, we're going to live stream that on our website at komonews.com starting at 11 a.m. And again, Lee and Theron, they always do a great job with that. They'll be back again this year to highlight that. And I wanted to share something too. My dad is actually a veteran, and I wanted to share this photo with you of him during his time in the military. And what's kind of funny is when I was growing up, I think my mom and some other folks were like, "You look a lot like your dad in this photo."
Absolutely.
I mean,
I was just going to say,
guy, right?
oh my goodness, this is you, Steve. This is wow.
Doesn't he look sharp?
Incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Tell your dad thank you.
Yes, most
For his
certainly. Thank you to
service,
my
yes.
dad and all the other amazing veterans out there that have served our country. We
Yeah.
are forever indebted and grateful for your service.
Absolutely, we are.
Yeah.
That wraps up episode 25 of Sound On. And for those of you who are new to Sound On, if this is your first Sound On experience, this is the show where we talk about what you all are talking about online in your communities. So if there's an issue, topic, idea you have or want us to talk about, let us know. Reach out to us on social media. Let's pull up our handles again. There they are. We are on all the social media platforms, or you can leave a comment underneath this YouTube video with whatever else you want us to talk about. This is a two-way conversation between us and you.
It is.
Yeah.
On to episode 26.
On to episode 26. Woo, woo! Thanks for the goodies, Steve.
You're welcome. It's been
We'll
fun.
see you all next week.
Bye-bye.